Shanae, the trainer, teaching UX in corporate environments. Show of hands, who's a UX researcher in here? All right, got my researchers. Where are my UX designers? All right, visual designers. Okay, any product managers? Yay, thanks for coming. Any developers in here? All right. Well, today we're going to dive in a little bit more about how do we teach user experience to our colleagues, to folks who are interested in what UX is, but have no idea where to begin. So you're real excited. You got this job as a UX designer, this fabulous team, and you're real pumped. They're happy to have you. They know UX is important. They just don't really know why. And they're looking at you, staring at you, wanting to know, teach me your ways. How do you do what you do? How can we make these products better? You're like, oh, okay, actually I have to stand up here and tell you what I do and explain it in an intelligible way. But you got this. You got this. The same principles that we use as UX designers, we use it in teaching and coaching others about what it is that we do. Don't let that imposter syndrome get to you. Don't let those doubts and those fears about what you know get to you. Teaching and coaching, it's not that bad. It's okay to stand up and tell other people about your experience. You don't have to be perfect. Nothing is perfect, but share what you know. And you start with what you already know. Apply those UX principles to creating curriculum. Begin with the end in mind. Some folks, when you start talking about UX and design, they want to start talking about pixels and font colors and the layout and, oh, this has to pop. It has to pop. So you got to reel them back in. You got to take some steps back and help them understand that there's a process that leads up to that final polished design. How about this one? You ever had a client tell you, oh, I don't really know what I want, but you build something, and then I'll tell you if it's right, okay? We're going to take them through the process. We're going to make sure that we're building the right thing up front. Find out, what does your audience really care about? What do they really want to learn? Who is your audience? So if you're teaching a group of developers how to apply UX design when they don't have a designer on their team, totally different conversation if you're talking to skilled UX designers on advanced topics. What is it that you want them to remember tomorrow? How will you help them remember that? Will you have some worksheets? Will you have some activities to help them engage with that content? And how can they use the information going forward? When they leave your session, what do you want them to walk away with? So think about that end process when you start building out your teaching curriculum to your colleagues. And you have to make it relevant. People care about their own problems. You have to make sure that connects to them, to what they care about. If there's project sponsors that you know of beforehand, ask them those key questions around what projects are important to this group. What's the terminology that this group calls their users? Are they working on service? Are they working on products? Are they working on digital transformation? Connect it with the language that they already are using, and you're going to make a very huge impact. And you definitely have to cater to your audience. And in this example, I'm using a finance team. So we're here at Edward Jones, so we know the finance folks are logical, they're concerned with the bottom line, less concerned with the emotions and the empathy that we talk about a lot as UX designers. They really want to care about, how does this impact the products that we create? How does this make our products better? So frame UX as a money maker, not just a cost to developing software. Apply principles to projects with real users. This is the foremost principle as UX designers, getting that real user feedback. PowerPoint is boring, so bring in some new ways to connect with your audience. What else can you do in that training to connect with the audience. Active learning is very key here. Having activities for them where they're able to write and they're able to talk, they're able to discuss in the room and hear other people and their perspectives and share their knowledge as well. Have some time for reflecting and problem solving. Have time for them to actually apply what you're teaching them. So if you're teaching a session on journey mapping, allow them to have some time to actually start building out a journey map themselves. Make it more interactive. Lecture is fine, but small doses. Keep it interactive. Keep it something that they can get their hands dirty with the content. And prep before the workshop. Gather that research from things online, from other people that you know who have taught similar content. Use what's already out there and add to it based on your users, based on your industry. Identify their expectations. And hey, things happen in the moment. Questions will come up, so plan for that. Think about some of those key questions that keep coming up over and over again. Maybe have some FAQs for your participants. Modules are very helpful. So there's a lot of knowledge that you have gained over years of being a UX researcher, UX designer, visual designer. Packaging that into a module, packaging that into something that's easily digestible, help someone learning from you understand it clearer. So brief overview to help them understand what the content is and what's coming next, having an overview of their problem, describing the solution, giving an example, and then allowing them to try it for themselves, making that content interactive. And then you repeat it as much as possible so that they are getting more comfortable with how to create that content for themselves, how to build those journey maps, those personas for themselves. It's no good if they just see a PowerPoint. They have to actually interact with the content as well. And that comes into learning by doing. Some of my favorite methods to teach are the design studio method, the 2x2 matrix, and pilot role playing. So for design studio, I'm sure a lot of the designers know this one. You start sketching, paper, Sharpies. If you're remote, you can use tools like Miro, so digital whiteboards. And you give your participants a time box. 5 minutes. We have a problem to solve. How do we make sure that we authenticate users based on their permissions and roles in this UI? Sketch out those ideas. 5 minutes. Not a lot of time. So you're trying to get those ideas out on paper, and then when that 5 minutes is up, present what you have to the rest of your group. Have that discussion. That's a key part of this, having that discussion, talking about what we do know, what we don't know, addressing those assumptions, and going back and iterating on that sketch. Another way to do this is to start with a sketch in that 5-minute time box, and when that 5 minutes is up, pass your sketch to the person to your right. So now you have to iterate on someone else's idea. How do you build, how do you create on top of something else that you haven't seen before? In this way, you're exploring those different ideas, exploring ways that we can innovate, ways that we can make these products better. How do we solve problems for our users? Another tool I love to use is 2x2 matrix. Helps with prioritization. If you're working toward MVP, helps with that. Y-axis, you have your value, high value, low value. X-axis, your cost or your effort, high cost, low cost. No overlapping. People want to overlap, but no overlapping, because this really helps you prioritize what's really important and how much time and effort is it going to require. In this example, I have creative feedback in my app. Low cost, high value, create a native cloud app, higher value, but also higher costs. So we're having a discussion around prioritization here. We could build this high value, high cost solution, but it's going to take more time and effort and resources. So having this discussion is the key point of this. We're doing these activities so that we're communicating, so that we're talking to each other, so that we're understanding how to build these great products. And that's what you want to convey when you're teaching these methods. That we're not just doing this because it's a checklist. We're doing this because we're trying to communicate. We're trying to have a negotiation. We're trying to have a conversation because we want to build the best products possible. Pilot and role playing. So I like to do this a lot for interviews or usability testing. Create that draft, sit down with another UX colleague or with your developer or product manager friend, and role play your script. Act as if someone is the actual user. And in this way, you're observing the flow of your questions, the flow of your usability tasks. Does it really make sense? If you're starting on screen 1 in the home page, and then you have a task that takes someone 3 pages deep, and then you have to go right back to the home page. Does it make sense? Maybe if you're trying to determine the discoverability of the home page, but you really have to think about the order of your tasks, your interview questions, and this is a great way to help you determine if everything is on track for your particular situation. Principle 3, incorporate peer review and wisdom of the crowd. So all of you people here, talking to your UX community. Check the posts, usability testing. Oh, there we go. So when you're creating curriculum, bless you, when you're creating curriculum on user experience methods, like creating personas or service design blueprints, you can share that curriculum with a safe environment. So volunteering with high school students and sharing what you know there. And if a 16-year-old can understand what you're talking about, then you're doing a pretty good job, okay? You can guest lecture a course. So college courses, they often love when professionals come in and share a little bit about what they know. You can test your curriculum out in some of those safer spaces before you bring it into your colleagues as well. Even lunch and learns with UX designers and researchers and visual designers. Where's my AV guy? And speaking at local meetups, speaking at STLX, great opportunities to share what you know, practice teaching and coaching in some of those safe environments before you have to bring it into executives who want to know about design thinking and want a 2-day workshop. So try it out in some of those smaller venues first, and then you'll be ready to go when they say, hey, I know you know UX. We have this top VP who wants to know everything about design thinking. Are you ready? Where's your curriculum? You'll be ready to go because you've already practiced. You've already put the tools in place and have received feedback on them. Another thing, best practices. So, love being a part of STLX community. Love also traveling and going to other cities and going to conferences for user experience and research. The way that we share information and hear about how people are applying those methods and bringing it back and sharing it with our colleagues in our community is how we grow this user experience movement. That's how we grow. That's how we educate not only ourselves, but the teams we work with, the naysayers who think, oh, you just make pretty pictures. Oh, you just make things look beautiful. Talking to other folks who are in that same predicament, who are trying to educate some people who just think that user experience should be the last thing that you do, not the first thing. We've all been there, and having that connection and understanding what are some best practices that other people have used that have been helpful, and bringing that back into the trainings that you are doing. You can find books, you can find videos, and incorporate that into your training as well as either additional materials or provide it as some type of way to have discussion point. So provide it as a topic, a book club topic, and bring it in and discuss it with your team. Incorporate handouts, any websites, any blogs like Smashing Magazine, love going there. UX Booth, love going there. Share those resources that you use with the people who in your team are craving for more information about user experience. And for their peer review, be brave and ask someone that you trust to give you honest feedback to come to your session. Observe you. If you are really brave, allow them to record you, record video, so you can see for yourself how you are presenting, how you are facilitating, how you are adjusting to the questions that come in to your session. And that helps you grow as a facilitator. That helps you grow as a teacher and a coach, as someone who is a leader and wants to continue sharing the values and methods of user experience. Also team up. You can co-instruct training with someone else that you respect. And that way, all the burden of creating the curriculum is not just on your shoulders. You have someone else you can bounce ideas with. So many ways to get involved as UX leaders and teaching and coaching in this field. So principle 4 is focusing on learning outcomes and not perfection. Done is better than perfect. Get it done. And the human mind has a tendency to look at the negativity more closely than what's positive, more closely than what's going well. You have to be intentional to train yourself to focus on the things that are going well. Yes, notice when things are imperfect and ways that you can improve it, but don't let that hold you back from trying again. Your teaching, your coaching will develop, it will get better over time. And you have never built a perfect product. Why does your training have to be perfect? It grows, it evolves over time. Perfection and effectiveness, very, very different. Focus on helping your attendees of your sessions ask the right questions. Think deeper. Take a step back. Offer resources to help them when they get stuck, as they will, as you do. What do you do when you get stuck? Emphasize that progress happens over time, not all at once. We could become experts in this field based upon our experience, based upon taking a step, taking a leap of faith, trying out some methods, seeing how it works. And if it doesn't work, we have some lessons learned. And we share that out for other people to understand and help them on their journey as well. And we continue to grow in this process. And that's just it. Your training is a work in process. Everything can be improved. Every product, every service, every training can be improved. And the first time you train with your colleagues, you're going to learn a bit more about your training style, your facilitation style. You may learn more than your trainees even learn in that session. Embrace it, enjoy the journey, and keep doing it. Keep growing and keep getting better at it. So harness that reflection and that retrospective. Assessment should focus on measuring objectives. Have some objectives for yourself, for your attendees. For your attendees, they want to grow in key areas. So they want to grow in learning how to create a journey map, how to create a service blueprint, how to create personas, how to ask relevant, valuable interview questions, how to do usability testing, what makes a good task for a usability session. And for you as a facilitator, what are some of the objectives that you have? Maybe being able to engage with your audience, maybe being able to have content prepared on time, maybe having additional resources, maybe not talking too fast, Think about some of the objectives that you may have as a facilitator as well. You can also do some pre and post assessments. Great way to test if people are actually listening to you in the session. So you can give them an assessment before you begin your session, and the exact same assessment after you have finished your assessment. And assess if anything has changed. So this is an example from a CPR training. On the left is the training from before the session. On the right, exact same training after the session. And this is just a simple way to test if after taking a session, has any information changed for the participant? Have they learned something new by coming to your session? And you can do this for any of the UX methods that you're teaching to your colleagues. After taking your design thinking session, have they learned about empathizing with the user? Have they learned about ways to gather feedback from users? Multiple ways to gather feedback from users. Have they learned about ways to ideate and to brainstorm? Another assessment idea is some real-time assessment. There's a lot of cool tools online where you could give feedback immediately. I like to use Socrative. So it creates small quizzes. You can access it from your mobile device, from your smartphone, from your tablet. And you can have some questions within your session. So you can stop and say, okay, everyone, let's stop, and I have a question for you. How many of you know the key components in creating a good usability task? And you have some options for them, and you can gauge by the responses if your content is landing, if they understand the content that you are giving them. So you can see this all in real time, and I have the links for you in the back of this presentation as well. And that can help you adjust and know maybe you need to slow down. If you have a lot of people who don't understand the content, maybe it's time to take a few steps back yourself as a facilitator and break it down further. It's a good way for you to gauge where the room is at. You don't want to talk way over their heads and they're not really understanding and connecting with your content. Also allow your participants to give you feedback. So you can do that by having them give you feedback directly in the course, having a survey on your facilitation, setting time aside in that session is the best idea because most people, when they leave, out of sight, out of mind. So if you have 10 minutes at the end of your session, allow them to have the opportunity to give you feedback. And we do retros a lot in the tech space. So use a retro for your own facilitation. I did this yesterday. I was at Rosati Kane High School and did a session on design thinking. Asked high school students, how would you rate this session? This will help me grow as a facilitator. And created this on a whiteboard, happy column, meh, so-so column, and sad, unhappy column. And I got some real-time feedback on what worked well in my session and what wasn't going so well. And I found out when I talked about coding and HTML, CSS, students were getting real confused. So next time I know to slow down and go a little bit deeper, step by step, into why that's important for designers to understand. So be brave and use this for yourself, for your facilitation. This helps you grow as a facilitator, as a teacher, as a coach of user experience methods and practices. And what I'll leave you with is a UX training checklist. So over the items we covered here today, applying UX principles to developing your curriculum, understanding who is the intended audience, what projects, what goals do they care about, what terminology do they use, applying those principles to projects with real users, learn by doing, incorporating peer review wisdom of the crowd. Getting some usability testing, doing peer reviews, having someone observe you, giving you feedback. Focus on those learning outcomes, not just on perfection. Emphasizing that with the people that you teach, that it takes time, that you are a resource for them. If they have questions, they can come to you. Knowing that your training will grow over time, it will evolve, and not being afraid to get that reflection and feedback. Setting time aside for you as a facilitator to grow, having those retrospectives where you're getting feedback on your facilitation style, how you're delivering that content. So considering post and pre-assessments, considering assessments during the session at different points, and that will help you grow as a facilitator. Thank you. Any questions? Comments?
So if there's one thing as somebody trying to better facilitate engagement with, particularly with people who are unfamiliar, what would be the one takeaway, the one place to start?
Yeah, I think for me it's trying to take steps back and understand the problem. Asking those questions. A lot of times we want to jump in and build solutions, but we don't really understand what the problem is. So I would encourage people who are engaging with user experience for the first time to just start asking why. Keep asking why. So I'm interested to hear what you all think. What's one thing that you would share with someone about user experience? Don't be shy.
Has the microphone?
She has the mic. Someone's back here. Back here.
Oh wow, that's louder than I thought. Just answering that question that you just asked, I really like the quote that you said, done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of designers are perfectionists, I'm certainly one of them, and it can be a really big block to just getting started and doing the work.
Definitely, yeah. And I got that quote from my friend Jen Kramer, who you see on the slide. Jen and I presented this deck at UXPA Boston earlier this year. So she wasn't able to make it today, but yeah, she would be happy to hear that you enjoyed that quote.
Ask your question again. I'll come up with something.
What's one thing that you would share with someone who's hearing about user experience for the first time? What's the most important thing to you to share?
User experience is your experience. I mean, that's the only thing that I can come up with. How do you interact with whatever it is you do in everyday life? That's the one thing that I think is important with user experience. What it is that you see that could be different.
Yeah, how could you improve this product, this service, this environment? Yeah.
Yes.
You have something?
I do.
I don't know if you're stretching or yeah, she's coming.
I would say that if you haven't had the opportunity to do real life user experience research with real people, you should definitely try to get into, like, if that's not your day-to-day, try to get involved in a project that does have that, or even just sit in on it. Because once you actually see people using a product, it changes the entire view of how you even design a product going forward.
Definitely. Up front here.
I think for me the most important thing is that when you're designing something is to not get too caught up in the design itself, and you have to always make sure that you're referencing some person or some user, because that's the most important aspect no matter what it is that you're creating.
Yeah, it's not just the designer coming up with these big, bright ideas. We're addressing the needs of our users and making sure that we pay homage to them and include them in the process each step of the way.
Don't worry, I'm loud.
I can hear you.
Right. I think the biggest thing to remember is like it's the human to human experience. It's not just the business to a client or the B2B or the B2C, whatever that looks like. But there is a human being on the other side of that, and what is that human being going to experience?
Exactly.
And I think that sometimes can get convoluted when you start thinking of, you know, like, oh, the salespeople want to design something. Oh, but the client wants this. But what does the end user want?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what we do as user experience designers and researchers. We focus on being a user advocate, bring the user back into those conversations.
And just to piggyback on what she said, it's so important that you always keep the user in mind when you're designing, and making sure that a lot of times users don't know what to ask or what, because they're not designers, okay? But making sure you're able to pull out what they really need in the design. So always, again, keeping the user in mind when you're designing.
Yeah, you're kind of like a translator. You're translating what you hear the user saying, and then what you know from your design experience and from the technical experience of your developers and understanding the business from the product managers. You're translating between these different spaces. It's pretty cool. Anyone else? Do you want the mic?
I can talk pretty loud. I think the most important things is as we're getting to more and more questions, because that's typically how we think, we're always asking more questions, or going through a process of ideation session, workshop, on-site, whatever research you're doing, brings you to more questions typically.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it's knowing what to do with them and when. I think the timing is important, and not just to ask them and let them lead. So I think being able to help direct and guide on behalf of your company or whatever that is, because they're relying on you to do something with those solutions.
I want to hear a session on that. That sounds really, really interesting. You can go deep in that. Yes, yes.
I work in CX analytics, and one of the things I find is really challenging is that a lot of people think that part of the solution to the problem is to go get feedback, but they don't know why they want feedback, so they just say, let's go do a survey, let's collect data from our users, and that will answer all of our questions. But they don't know what their questions are, so they just throw a bunch of random questions on a survey, and then they get the data back, and they don't know what to do with it, because they didn't understand their problem to begin with. So I think the biggest thing from my perspective is often that if you don't understand your problem fully, to understand what you need to ask your users, you're going to end up with really either information overload because you ask too many questions, or you're going to end up with information that's not useful because you ask users things that weren't relevant. So by understanding the questions to ask your users, because you understand your problem, you'll get back the right data at the right time from the right people. So it's kind of an extension of what you said, right? Understanding your problem, but also understanding who to ask, what to ask, and when to ask them, so that you can get back what you need in order to solve that problem correctly.
Yes, all of that. Yes. So I work at Boeing in Hazelwood, and I am a UX designer by trade. I do not build airplanes. So I have lots of questions all the time, and I doing my due diligence to ask the right technical experts, what questions should I ask users? I don't have the subject matter expertise to know what questions to ask. I have the facilitation expertise, but I don't know the subject matter enough. And being willing to say that, say, hey, what would you suggest I ask? So being willing to get out of your comfort zone and connect with the people who can help you. Yeah, very good.
I'm new with this, but I was listening to everybody else, and we were talking about the end user. The end user is all about the end user, but there's a lot of things that happen backstage that the end user get to where they're getting. And would it also important to consider that the people that work with the backstage are also users themselves to get that end user?
Yeah, stakeholders. Yeah. So definitely starting with those stakeholders, understanding how do they see this as a problem. And you'll find out a lot of times they have different interpretations of what the problem is. So you're going back to square one, like, can we get into alignment on what problem we're actually solving with this group?
Well, actually, building on what you're saying, I think it's more than just stakeholders, right? Because you can have multiple end users.
It's true, yeah.
If you're building a system for airplane engineers, there may also be airplane designers who
Oh,
have
yes.
to use that same system.
All over the world, yes, yes.
Understanding that our audiences are very, just like when we talk about understanding that our audiences are very rarely doing just one thing, our audiences very rarely fit into just one category.
Yeah, and it takes time, it takes effort to understand that, but it's definitely worth it. Yeah. Okay.
So a question to go along with everything that people have been saying is, so when you are dealing with multiple different types of users, that's like you're tackling one problem that has multiple different facets of that same problem for different people. What is the best way to begin to gather information in order to, as someone was saying before, narrow down what information you're looking at asking, and how do you know when there's intersectionality between the questions for each like separate user?
Yeah, I know for myself, I started having stakeholder interviews first and trying to engage from the stakeholders. Where should we focus our efforts? And so like right now, I'm working on an effort that has users based in the U.S. but also internationally, and trying to focus on what are those key sites. So we have these multiple sites, but which site should we start with from your opinion? So asking those stakeholders those questions first, and then narrowing down. That's what I would do. Anyone else? Any other? Yeah.
I'm an architect, but I'm not familiar with the UX design, so I want to know whether they have something different or something common, the UX design and the architecture design.
Systems architecture design. I'm not that familiar with that space, but I think, as we mentioned, understanding the problem is key first. So going through the process of understanding the problem and systems that are at play and how they integrate. It's similar in user experience research, understanding the different user groups that are involved, and for service design, systems that the users interact with. So I think around the research side, you're going to see a lot more overlap. I would say starting with the user research would be helpful. That's just my opinion. If anyone else has some knowledge to share with her about systems and user experience, definitely feel free to jump in. Yeah.
Today there are some. I think
Yes, you do.
Can't hear you.
there are some user behavior methods that would be related to this area of user research. There are so many, not so many, there are softwares that simulate user behaviors in the diagrams of architecture that we have, with diagrams that we have in a user experience. These are the things that are overlapping. So yeah, I think that would help, that would be helpful. As an architect, learning UX would definitely help you to develop your career.
One right in the back here. You guys have some good feedback and advice in here. Yeah.
So I have a question. Have you ever had a situation where you were involved in a project and you could see an opportunity to leverage UX, but the people in the project weren't necessarily asking for it, so you didn't really have an opportunity to provide like a whole training? How would you approach that type of conversation?
Yeah, often time is the issue. So, you know, they want to do something that would take more time, but they just don't have it. So sometimes some of those in-person trainings, they just can't do it because they're spread out. So trying to create smaller modules and send them videos. I can record myself and send them videos, or do remote trainings using digital whiteboards like Miro. So try to just break it down into smaller sessions and to make it something that they can access on their own time.
So, as one of them mentioned that if you have different versions of the same problem from different user perspectives, so what do you think that can we use design thinking workshop from different user perspective to solve the problem? And maybe later experts can synthesize different versions to come up with a better optimal solution?
Yeah, I don't know if you you need. So I don't know enough about the problems. You know, you need to have design thinking workshops at every site, but you can start with doing those interviews and trying to understand what the problems that they are hearing. And you might not need a full design thinking workshop. Maybe they really have a hard time with gathering feedback from their users. You can just focus on best practices for interviewing and getting feedback through usability testing. So just kind of pinpointing or where the issue is. Maybe they need help with ideation and brainstorming ideas, like methods for creating new products and services. You can pinpoint on how we do that. So I think providing the content that's most relevant to their group is going to be most effective. So having a conversation and understanding what they need. Anyone else? All right, you guys have been great. Thank you.